A Tale of Betrayal and Redemption. Welcome again, my friends, to Tales with David. I am your old friend David Miller, and tonight I bring you a story that is heavier than stone, yet fragile as glass. It is the story of betrayal, of a son who turned against the very hands that fed him, the parents who carried his burdens. Now, listen carefully, because this story of Ethan Cole will remind us all that when trust is broken inside a family, nothing else in this world can fix it. Maplewood was not a rich town. Small cottages lined the narrow streets, smoke curling from chimneys in winter, children running barefoot in summer. In one such cottage lived Margaret and Thomas Cole, a couple who had spent 40 years building their simple life. Their home wasn't grand, 2 bedrooms, wooden floors creaking with age, but it was filled with warmth. Margaret had once worked as a school teacher, and Thomas as a carpenter. Together they saved every extra dollar, not for vacations, not for luxuries, but for their only son, Ethan. Thomas would say, leaning back in his chair after long hours at the workshop, "One day, boy, all this will be yours, the land, the cottage, even the apple orchard out back. We worked hard so you could live easy." And Ethan? He nodded, smiled politely, but deep inside, a restless fire burned. You see, Ethan wanted more. The little cottage, the orchard, the steady, predictable life, it all felt like a prison to him. His friends in town, Luke, Darren, and Marcus, spoke of fast deals, quick profits, and nights filled with flashing lights and money flowing like rivers. Ethan wanted that. Margaret noticed her son drifting. She would sit by the window, knitting, her eyes following him when he came home late. "Ethan," she whispered once, "are you happy here?" He kissed her forehead, forced a smile, and replied, "Of course, Mother. You and Father gave me everything." But behind those words hid a lie. One autumn evening, as leaves turned gold and the orchard glowed under the setting sun, Ethan sat with his friends at O'Malley's Tavern. They laid out their plan, a property investment deal. "All you need," Marcus said, tapping his glass, "is capital. We're talking big returns, Ethan, triple the money in 6 months." "Where would I get that kind of money?" Ethan asked. Luke smirked. "You've got that land, don't you? The cottage, the orchard? You're the only one in this town sitting on property worth over 80 grand. Mortgage it. Your parents won't even know until the money's rolling in." Ethan's heart pounded. $85,000. His parents' life work. He took a deep breath. And in that moment, the seed of betrayal was planted. The Martinez household had always looked perfect from the outside. Neighbors admired Daniel and Maria as the couple who seemed to have it all: stable jobs, 2 beautiful children, and a cozy home filled with laughter. Yet behind closed doors, the cracks were beginning to form, small at first, but slowly widening into dangerous fault lines. Maria had grown suspicious over the last few months. Daniel's work hours were suddenly longer, his phone always guarded like a treasure chest, and the warmth in his eyes seemed to fade whenever he looked at her. He brushed off her concerns with excuses: deadlines, pressure at work, a boss who demanded too much. Still, she felt the distance. She felt the coldness creeping into their bed at night, the silence replacing what once was late-night conversations and shared dreams. Daniel, on the other hand, carried his own bitterness. He felt unappreciated, convinced Maria was more focused on the children than on him. He longed for validation, for admiration, for something he believed Maria no longer gave. Instead of facing the problems head-on, he found comfort in dangerous places, conversations with someone who wasn't his wife. A coworker, Elena, who knew how to feed his wounded pride with compliments and subtle touches. Meanwhile, Maria had secrets of her own. Her old college friend Victor had recently reappeared in her life. He had always been the one who understood her emotions deeply, who listened without judgment. Their chats began innocently, catching up after years apart, but as Daniel pulled away, Maria leaned closer to Victor's presence. What started as harmless messaging grew into late-night calls and hidden smiles whenever his name appeared on her screen. Neither Maria nor Daniel realized how far they were drifting, not just from each other, but from the values they once promised to uphold. Both believed they were victims, blind to the fact that they were also betrayers. Both justified their actions. Daniel claimed Maria had pushed him away, while Maria believed that Daniel had abandoned her emotionally. The irony was cruel. They were both wounding each other in the same way, at the same time. The children noticed. 12-year-old Sophia grew quieter, hiding in books, while little Mateo asked questions Maria didn't know how to answer. Why is Daddy always gone? Why do you look sad, Mommy? The house that once echoed with laughter now carried an unsettling silence, interrupted only by muffled phone calls and the sound of secrets being born. And so, without realizing it, Daniel and Maria were laying the foundation of their own downfall, not knowing that betrayal never stays hidden forever. Daniel stared at himself in the mirror one late evening after work. His tie hung loose around his neck, and his phone buzzed relentlessly on the counter. Elena's name flashed on the screen. For a moment he hesitated. The guilt gnawed at him, but so did the craving for her attention. With a deep sigh, he picked it up, knowing full well that each word he spoke would bury him deeper into deceit. At the same time, Maria sat on the couch, her fingers trembling as she typed another message to Victor. His responses soothed her loneliness. He reminded her of the young woman she once was, vibrant, full of dreams, and hopeful. She smiled softly, forgetting for a moment that she was a wife and mother. The walls of the Martinez home now carried unspoken truths, secrets heavy enough to crush the very foundation of their family. The children sensed it in ways adults often underestimate. Sophia, wise beyond her years, noticed her mother's glowing face when Victor's messages came through. She also noticed her father's absences, his sudden excuses, and the way his laughter sounded different when he thought no one was listening. One Saturday morning, as Maria prepared breakfast, Sophia finally asked the question that pierced Maria's heart.
Mom?
Are you and Dad happy? Maria froze, her hands tightening around the spatula. She forced a smile and replied, Of course we are, sweetie. Why would you ask that? Sophia shrugged, her eyes filled with quiet sadness. It just feels different. The innocence of her daughter's words haunted Maria all day. She wanted to believe her own lie, but deep down she knew Sophia was right. Happiness had left their home long ago, replaced by suspicion and longing for someone else's arms. That night, Daniel and Maria crossed paths in the hallway, both weary, both hiding something, yet neither brave enough to confess. For a fleeting moment their eyes met, and in that silence the truth screamed, louder than words ever could. They were both betraying each other, both destroying the very family they once swore to protect. But betrayal has a way of unraveling, no matter how carefully it is concealed. Viewers, what do you think? Can betrayal ever be justified when both sides feel unloved? Or do two wrongs only make things worse? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know what side of the story you see. Daniel stared at himself in the mirror one late evening after work. His tie hung loose around his neck, and his phone buzzed relentlessly on the counter. Elena's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, he hesitated. The guilt gnawed at him, but so did the craving for her attention. With a deep sigh, he picked it up, knowing full well that each word he spoke would bury him deeper into deceit. At the same time, Maria sat on the couch, her fingers trembling as she typed another message to Victor. His responses soothed her loneliness. He reminded her of the young woman she once was, vibrant, full of dreams, and hopeful. She smiled softly, forgetting for a moment that she was a wife and mother. The walls of the Martinez home now carried unspoken truths, secrets heavy enough to crush the very foundation of their family. The children sensed it in ways adults often underestimate. Sophia, wiser than her years, noticed her mother's glowing face when Victor's messages came through. She also noticed her father's absences, his sudden excuses, and the way his laughter sounded different when he thought no one was listening. One Saturday morning, as Maria prepared breakfast, Sophia finally asked a question that pierced Maria's heart. "Mom, are you and Dad happy?" Maria froze, her hands tightening around the spatula. She forced a smile and replied, "Of course we are, sweetie. Why would you ask that?" Sophia shrugged, her eyes filled with quiet sadness. "It just feels different." The innocence of her daughter's words haunted Maria all day. She wanted to believe her own lie, but deep down she knew Sophia was right. Happiness had left their home long ago, replaced by suspicion and longing for someone else's arms. That night, Daniel and Maria crossed paths in the hallway, both weary, both hiding something, yet neither brave enough to confess. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met, and in that silence, the truth screamed louder than words ever could. They were both betraying each other, both destroying the very family they once swore to protect. But betrayal has a way of unraveling, no matter how carefully it is concealed. Viewers, what do you think? Can betrayal ever be justified when both sides feel unloved? Or do two wrongs only make things worse? The Martinez home had once been filled with warmth, family dinners, laughter spilling across the table, late-night board games with the children. But now, those memories seemed like ghosts haunting every corner of the house. Daniel began staying out later than usual, offering flimsy excuses about meetings or traffic. Maria pretended not to notice, though she carried the weight of her own guilt. The two moved around each other like strangers, careful not to collide, careful not to reveal too much. One evening, as Daniel finally walked through the door near midnight, he found his son Gabriel still awake on the couch. The boy looked at his father with eyes that seemed far older than their years. "Dad, why don't you smile at Mom anymore?" Daniel froze, unable to answer. His throat tightened, and for a split second he considered telling his son the truth, that life had gotten complicated, that people sometimes make choices they can't undo. But instead he ruffled his son's hair and muttered, "It's just stress, buddy. Don't worry." But Gabriel did worry. He worried every day as he watched his parents drift apart. Meanwhile, Maria's conversations with Victor grew bolder, He began asking her questions that made her heart race. When will you leave him? When can we start our life together? She hadn't dared to answer, but a part of her longed to escape the silent prison her marriage had become. One afternoon, as she typed a hesitant reply, Sophia walked into the room. Maria quickly hid her phone, but the look in her daughter's eyes was telling. Sophia knew something. Children often know more than their parents realize. That night, Daniel and Maria sat across from each other at the dinner table. The children picked at their food, the silence stretching unbearably. For a moment, Maria wanted to confess, to spill everything before it shattered on its own. But Daniel spoke first. "Maria, are you happy?" The question lingered in the air like smoke. Maria's lips parted, but no words came out. Both of them knew the answer. Neither of them had the courage to admit it. The cracks in the walls of their home were no longer invisible. They were growing deeper, louder, impossible to ignore. The following weeks were like walking on a fragile glass floor. One wrong step and everything could shatter. Daniel buried himself in work, returning home with exhaustion painted across his face, while Maria floated through the days, her thoughts elsewhere. The children, though young, weren't blind. Gabriel noticed the way his mother's phone buzzed late at night, how she quickly turned the screen away. Sophia caught her father staring at the wall during dinner, lost in thoughts he never shared. One rainy evening, Maria met Victor in a quiet cafe across town. She wore a scarf and sunglasses, as though disguises could hide the guilt clawing inside her. Victor leaned across the table, his voice low but firm. "Maria, how long will you keep living like this? You deserve happiness. We both do." Maria's chest tightened. "And what about Daniel? The kids? They'll hate me if they find out." Victor's eyes darkened, his hand closing over hers. "They'll forgive you. Love is worth the risk." Back at home, Daniel was scrolling through bills when he noticed an unusual charge on their joint credit card, an expensive dinner for two at a place he had never been. His chest sank. At first, he told himself it must be a mistake, but deep inside, a storm was forming. That night, as Maria entered the house, shaking rain from her coat, Daniel studied her closely. Her hair was slightly tousled, her cheeks flushed. "You're late," he said quietly. Maria's smile faltered. "I was running errands." Daniel wanted to believe her. He wanted so badly, but the seed of suspicion had already taken root. Upstairs, Gabriel whispered to Sophia, "Something's wrong. Mom and Dad, they're not the same anymore." Sophia nodded, hugging her pillow tightly. "I'm scared, Gabriel. What if they don't stay together?" Neither of them knew that the truth was already unraveling bit by bit in the shadows. Friends, let me ask you, have you ever felt that silence in a home when words are not spoken but the heart knows something is wrong? Do you think children notice more than parents realize? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. I'd love to know your perspective. The days grew colder, but inside the Greenwood house, the chill came not from the weather, it came from the silence. Daniel had become sharper in his tone, his laughter gone. Maria walked like a shadow, careful not to meet his eyes too long. One evening, after dinner, Daniel asked Maria to stay behind while the children went upstairs. The sound of their small footsteps faded, leaving only the ticking of the old clock on the wall. "Maria," Daniel began, his voice low but steady, "where were you last Thursday?" Maria froze. The spoon she was carrying clattered onto the table. "I told you. Errands." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Errands don't cost $200 at a fancy restaurant. I checked the bank statement." Her breath caught. "You checked?" "Yes." His fist slammed the table, the sound echoing through the kitchen. "Maria, Are you seeing someone?" The silence that followed was unbearable. Maria looked at the floor, her hands trembling. She wanted to lie, to cover her tracks once more, but Daniel's eyes burned with a mixture of anger and sorrow, and the truth slipped out before she could stop it. "Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but yes." Daniel's chest tightened like a vice. "Who?" When she said the name Victor, Daniel's head dropped into his hands. His old friend, his brother in everything but blood. The betrayal cut twice as deep. "Maria," he groaned, his voice cracking. "Of all the people, Maria." "Him?" She tried to reach for him, tears streaming down her face. "Daniel, please. I was lonely. I felt invisible. Victor listened to me when—" Daniel pushed her hand away. Don't you dare put this on me. I worked day and night for this family, for you, and this is what you give back." Upstairs, Gabriel and Sophia huddled at the top of the stairs, listening. Their little hearts pounded as the words echoed through the house, words they couldn't unhear. That night, Daniel didn't sleep in their room. He sat in the living room armchair, staring at nothing, the weight of betrayal pressing down on his chest. And Maria, she cried quietly in the dark, realizing that the life she once thought unshakable was crumbling faster than she could hold it together. The sun rose the next morning, but for Daniel there was no warmth in its light. He sat at the kitchen table, his hands clasped, his eyes hollow. The children shuffled in quietly, sensing the storm still lingered. Maria entered last. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She wanted to speak, but Daniel's silence was heavier than words. Finally he stood. "I'm leaving." Maria's breath hitched. "Daniel, please, don't." "Not in front of the children." But his voice stayed firm. "They deserve to know the truth. Gabriel, Sophia, your mother betrayed me. She betrayed this family." The children's faces crumpled. Sophia clung to her brother, whispering, "No, no." Gabriel tried to be strong, but tears slid down his cheeks. Maria dropped to her knees, sobbing, "Daniel, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake, but don't destroy us, please. I still love you." He shook his head slowly. "Love doesn't look like this, Maria. Love doesn't tear a family apart." With that, he walked out the door, leaving behind the home they had built together, leaving behind the trust that could never be rebuilt. Weeks later, Maria tried reaching out to Victor, but karma struck swiftly. Victor moved on, leaving her alone and disgraced. The neighbors whispered, her family turned cold, and the life she sacrificed everything for crumbled into dust. The children grew distant from her. Gabriel resented her for breaking her father's heart. Sophia barely spoke to her at all. The laughter of their home was gone, replaced by echoes of regret. And Daniel, though his heart remained scarred, he found strength in rebuilding his life with his children by his side. His pain became a lesson that trust, once broken, never heals the same. My friends, betrayal cuts deeper than any wound the body can bear. A family is built on trust, and when that trust shatters, the pieces cut everyone. Parents, children, love, all of it bleeds. If there's one thing to take from Daniel and Maria's story, it's this. Never treat the ones who love you as if they are invisible, because karma always waits, and it never forgets. If you felt this story in your heart, don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon so you never miss more stories like this. And share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Maria deserved what she got, or was there a chance at forgiveness?